All right, guys, well, here we are. What you all been waiting for, the reproductive system. What pretty much everybody in the class voted for, except maybe 2 people. And one of those people was me. Anyways, all right, so I'm looking at the test here. 90 questions, 90 multiple choice questions, 3 essays. Today's little presentation is 24 slides. I'm not going to talk all that much because we'd be here all day. So I'm going to try to point out, I've looked over the whole test, I'm going to try to point out the things you're going to need to know. Now this slide right here, basically you can read it. But, let me see. From regular biology, if you remember from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was, somatic cells, those are your body cells. They're called diploid or diploid because they have 2 of each chromosome. So basically, you are half of your mom and half of your dad. You get one chromosome each from your mom and 1 of each chromosome from your dad. So you get 23 from your mom, and you also get 23 from your dad, and that makes you diploid with 46 chromosomes. Gametes. Those are the sex cells or reproductive cells. Gametes are what's called haploid. Haploid has half of the chromosomes, or half the DNA. So that is why the gametes from your parents each had 23 chromosomes and not 46 like you got. Because obviously, when the male sperm comes together with the female egg, 23 plus 23 equals a Homo sapien with 46 chromosomes. The male gamete, of course, is the sperm. Female gamete is the ova or ovum for singular. As you can see down here, fertilization, that's when old Mr. Sperm meets up with Mr. Egg, or Mrs. Egg, I guess. And when they come together, that's fertilization. As soon as the egg is fertilized, it becomes what's called a zygote. All right, moving on. Gonads. Gonads, the structures that produce either sperm in the males, so that's the testes, ova or ovum, the egg, and the females, and of course those are produced in the ovaries, so those are the various gonads. Ducts, I'm not really going to say a lot, just know that they're tubes for the most part. There's going to be a bunch of them, so I mean that's just like a generic term for all the tubes, and they all have, usually it's to transport materials from one spot to another, but there's also some other functions. Accessory glands, just like we've seen that word accessory in pretty much every unit we've done. These are just like little helpful structures that are going to support in the formation of gametes, the sperm and egg. You males out there, someday you might need to see a urologist. That is study and treatment of disease of the male reproductive system. And females would go to a gynecologist. Gynecology. All right, so this slide is basically just review from biology, regular biology. Remember somatic cells, those are your body cells like skin, bone, blood, muscles. Those are diploid or diploid because they have 2 of each chromosome type. So they have 2 number 1s, 2 chromosome number 2s. Remember, you get 1 from mom, 1 from dad. So we have 23 pairs of chromosomes as humans for a total of 46. Your autosomes are chromosome pairs number 1 through 22. They're autosomes because whether you're a male or female, everybody's got them. You all have the same, if you looked at the first 22 pairs of chromosomes, male and females, they look the same. It is that 23rd pair that determines the sex of a baby. So that would be, if you're a female, you got 2 X chromosomes. And males, you got the X chromosome from your mom, but your dad gave you his Y chromosome, and that's what made you a male. So males are XY, females are XX. Of course, our gametes, our sex cells, the sperm and egg, they have to be haploid. They have to have half the number of chromosomes as the rest of the cells in your body. The reason for that is obviously 1/2 plus 1/2 at fertilization equals a whole person. Karyotype. I don't think this is on the test. Karyotype is basically what do your chromosomes look like and how many of them do you got? Well, this is a human, 46 total chromosomes, 23 pairs. Number one's the biggest, and they get smaller and smaller as you move down the line. Does anybody know if this is a male or a female? That's correct. This person got an X chromosome from their mom, and they got a Y chromosome from their dad, so this would be a male. All right, so meiosis, hopefully you guys remember that from biology, especially if you had me in biology. It's just the process which makes the gametes, makes the haploid gametes, so it takes your somatic cells, has 46 chromosomes, and turns them, cuts that number in half to 23 chromosomes that go into the sperm or egg, the gametes. And like I said, the reason that is important, you want your gametes, sex cells, to only have 23, because 23 plus 23 equals 46. Like I told my regular bios this year, if they did not cut in half to 23, and your gametes had 46, 46 plus 46 would equal 92. Well, humans do not have 92 chromosomes. Shrimp do. Shrimp have 92 chromosomes. So do some rats. But obviously, you do not want to have a baby shrimp or a baby rat. So, you really want your gametes to be cut down in half from 46 to 23. So your baby will have 46. One thing I'm going to say here, crossing over, I didn't see that on our test, but that is just a kind of like a genetic recombination or shuffling that occurs during meiosis where your chromosomes actually exchange genetic information. So your homologous chromosomes, one from your mom and one from your dad, they actually exchange some DNA during meiosis, and that's going to increase genetic variation. So that basically makes it impossible. Even though males make like 300 sperm a day, none of them are going to be exactly alike, mostly because of crossing over, the genetic recombination. All right, real quick. So this is the crossing over in a picture form. This one could be like from mom, and this yellow one right here could be from dad. Well, synapsis just means homologous chromosomes, so we'll say this is chromosome number 1. So that would also be chromosome number 1. That's what makes them homologous chromosomes. They carry the same type of genetic information. Synapsis just means they're hanging out in a group of 2 chromosomes or 4 sister chromatids. You won't need to know that. That's called a tetrad. And here's where they're actually crossing over and exchanging genetic information. So you can see this chromosome from dad got a little bit of mom DNA here, and this chromosome from mom got traded and got a little bit of dad DNA. So they've mixed, they've shuffled their DNA. All right, super fast. Prophase I, I do not think you're going to have to know this, but this is the first stage of meiosis, meiosis I. This is where crossing over occurs. So on the previous slide where you saw the mom chromosome gave some of its DNA to the dad chromosome, and they traded some genetic material. This is when that happens. And I don't think you're going to have to know more than that, so moving on. Anaphase I, if you remember, anaphase is when the chromosomes start to move away from each other in meiosis. The only thing else is cytokinesis, when the cell actually cleaves off, pinches off, and forms two new cells. That's cytokinesis. I don't think you need to know it. Meiosis II, I think you need to know less of it than even meiosis I. All I want you to know is, at the end of meiosis, you get 4 completely genetically unique haploid. Remember, haploid means it has half the number of chromosomes as the rest of your cells. So you get 4 totally unique cells called gametes. In the males, that's a sperm. In the females, that's the egg or the ovum. Alrighty then, male reproductive system. No clue what you need to know on this one yet. So I would definitely not draw this and write all this stuff down. We'll figure out what's important as we go. So there you go. I'm sure you'll have some sort of diagram to fill out eventually, but I don't have that yet. So moving on. Alright, on to the scrotum. It is basically a sac or a pouch which holds the male testes, made of skin, fascia, which is just connective tissue, and also smooth muscle. It is very important in reproduction, mainly because of temperature regulation. Now these muscles in it, called cremaster muscles, if it gets too cold, it causes the testes to elevate closer to your body. And if it gets too warm, it relaxes those muscles and makes them drop further away from the body. The reason is because for the sperm to survive, for sperm survival, it requires a very, very precise temperature. Now, some guys that have trouble having kids, the doctor will say, hey, wear boxers. This will move the testes further away, thus lowering the temperature, which gives the sperm a better chance to survive. Because let's face it, if you want to have kids, you got to have sperm that can actually reach the egg. Alright, another nice diagram for you. These two are in red, so I'm guessing they're kind of important. Here's the cremaster muscle, which can move when it contracts, it'll move the testes closer to the body, making them warmer. And if they're too warm, they can relax and move them away, which will cool them down. You also have the scrotal septum. So you also have a septum. It's basically just a septum just means something that divides. You have one in your nose. If you have a deviated septum like I do, you'll have trouble breathing out of one nose. Well, the scrotal septum just divides the scrotum into two distinct compartments, each holding a testes. Alright, the male testes. Obviously, their function, it's always what's most important, produce and store the male gametes, the sperm, and they also produce and release the male hormones, mainly testosterone. Lobules. These are compartments which contain these seminiferous tubules. These seminiferous tubules are where the sperm are actually produced. Spermatogonia, if you want to think of it like this, so spermatogonia would be like a baby sperm. It's not a sperm yet. It'll mature into two different types of what's called spermatocytes, and eventually they'll mature further into a fully developed sperm cell. Alright, I'm not going to say much about this one because the next slide shows pretty much the same thing. Just know that spermatogenesis, remember the word genesis means to make. So this is the process of making sperm cells from the spermatogonia, like the baby sperm cells that aren't quite ready to be sperm cells yet. Alright, and it's kind of like how spermatogenesis works. This is the seminiferous tubule, which we had. So this whole thing is a seminiferous tubule. And it works kind of like how your skin works. Now, in the epidermis, you had the basal layer, and then you had the corneum at the top. Well, these down here at the very bottom, those are where the spermatogonium are. Like the babies, they're not ready to be sperm cells yet. And they mature as they move closer to the open space called the lumen. So they'll go from spermatogonium. When they get a little bit more mature, they become primary spermatocytes. When they become even more mature, secondary spermatocytes. And when they're ready to be released, you can kind of see them here, these pink guys in there. Those are the spermatozoa, or the sperm cells. And once again, the lumen always means the space inside. And another little diagram here. Since this is in red, I'm guessing that's going to become important. The Sertoli cells, that's the nucleus of the Sertoli cell, and this whole thing is a Sertoli cell. And it's like an accessory structure. It supports the developing sperm cells before they become fully developed up here. They do a lot of things. They release fluids, which makes it easier for the developing sperm to move up. They actually eat sperm that's bad. It's called phagocytosis. They eat the bad sperm cells, and they also help nourish the developing sperm cells. All right, so basically the same thing. Seminiferous tubule contains all the stages of sperm development from the spermatogonium all the way up to the mature sperm cells or spermatozoa. And just look at how they develop as it goes up. All right, and once again, here's your Sertoli cells. The cells that kind of help. They're little helper cells to support the developing sperm cells. And this is how they do it. It has a longer list than I told you. So you might want to know some of those. Also the Leydig cells. These are the guys that secrete the hormone testosterone. For you guys, if you have a deep voice, that's what gives it to you. If you can grow a beard. And it also gives you the narrow hips that us males have. So Leydig cells secrete the male hormone testosterone. All right, a problem with some male infants. So about 3% of males that are full term or 30% of premature male infants can have something called cryptorchidism. And that's just where the testes fail to drop from the abdominal cavity. This should happen before childbirth, where they drop from the abdominal cavity and into the scrotum. So they're basically, this word basically just means hidden testes. And that's where, with surgical treatment, it can be cured. All right, so here's just a picture that kind of shows you what that last slide is all about. So normally, before childbirth, the male testes will fall down into the scrotum, but for an infant that has cryptorchidism, that testes did not fall down naturally. It stayed up here in the abdominal cavity, and that's what that is. Okay, here's a little interesting diagram for spermatogenesis, where remember, we start with the spermatogonium. It undergoes mitosis, which it makes an exact copy of itself. So one of them went this way and one of them's going to go over here. Some of them need to stay because this guy is going to, if they all left, eventually there'd be no more spermatogonium left to make sperm cells. Well, it reaches here, and when it enters meiosis I, it is a primary spermatocyte. After meiosis I, it splits off into two cells. Those are the secondary spermatocytes. And then after meiosis II, that's where you get the spermatids, which will later mature into spermatozoa or sperm cells. Pretty much the same thing, just some different information over here. So you can see the primary spermatocyte. It's got 2N in there because it's still diploid or diploid. It still has 2 of each chromosome. After meiosis I, that's where it becomes haploid. That's where it has half the original amount of chromosomes. In humans, that means 23. And there you go. All right, I will put a little star here because I did see about 5 questions on the test about the morphology or the structure of the sperm itself. So we'll start with the head part of the sperm. That's what contains the 23 chromosomes in humans. If you're a chimp, it would have 24. But in humans, that's what has the 23 male chromosomes that could possibly fertilize the egg. It also has acrosome. These are enzymes like hyaluronidase and proteinase. And these enzymes help to break through the outer wall of the egg. So these enzymes, these acrosomes, those would help it to break through the outer wall of the egg. The mid piece of the sperm, full of mitochondria. And if you remember from regular biology, mitochondria is the powerhouse of cells. It converts glucose or sugar into ATP energy. And sperm, they need to move. They can't just sit there. They got to find the egg and then they got to get inside the egg. Well, the tail, the flagellum, is going to be flapping around. And to do that, it requires energy. So does the mitochondria here that provide the energy for the sperm to move around. And we did it. The last slide of reproductive system number 1. And I guess some interesting sperm facts. And I think some of these are on our test. All right, so males, you guys make about 3 million sperm a day. That is a lot. I don't think that one is on the test, but it takes about 10 weeks for your sperm to reach full maturity. They can live for about 2 weeks in the testes. I'm fairly certain that's not on the test. I think this one is. They can survive about 48 hours or 2 days in a female, but can survive as long as 5 days. If I remember correctly, I think I remember seeing that on the test. Remember, 2 to 5 days. I don't even believe this, to be honest with you, but you can read it and write it if you want. But they say that research suggests that sperm carrying the X chromosome lasts longer, and the sperm carrying the Y, or the male chromosome, they're faster, I guess because the Y chromosome is much smaller than the X, which means that sperm would be a tiny bit lighter and a little bit faster. I don't know about that, but it is interesting, even if it may not be true. And the body copes fine with unused sperm to no effect, so even if you're not using your sperm, you'll be okay. All right, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.